Hey there. Welcome to the deep dive. So, you brought us this great pile of sources all about Suze Orman's financial advice, specifically her biggest money tips.
Yeah, it's quite a collection.
And digging into them, articles, notes, all that research, it's really good stuff.
It really is. I mean, Suze Orman's, she's been such a huge voice in personal finance for decades.
Mm-hmm.
And looking at these materials, you can kind of see why.
Definitely.
There's some really core principles here, not just about managing money, but, building a secure life.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, what we want to do is sort of cut through everything, pull out the most essential bits from these sources,
Mhm.
and lay out her approach so you get those aha moments, without getting totally overwhelmed.
Right, like the core of her philosophy just distilled for you.
Yeah.
And we've basically pulled out what look like her top 10 principles based on what keeps coming up in these different sources.
Right.
They cover, well, everything from big mindset shifts to some really practical, maybe even tough
Yeah.
advice.
Okay, sounds good. Let's jump in and unpack them. First up, something that feels, well, less like a strict money rule and maybe more like a life rule, but she puts it right at the center.
Yeah. That's her golden rule, as some sources call it. People first, then money, then things.
People first, before money. When we're talking about money tips, that
Mhm.
sounds a bit backwards, maybe.
Huh. Yeah, I can see it that way.
What's the real idea there, according to the sources?
It's really about lining up your financial life with what you actually value. The sources, they really stress that true wealth isn't just about dollars or, owning stuff.
Right.
It's about how you treat people, how you treat yourself. If you end up sacrificing relationships or your health or your integrity just chasing money or things,
Yeah.
well, you're losing something much more important.
Okay, so the idea is if you get your priorities straight, like focusing on well-being, relationships, it actually makes the money decisions easier.
Exactly. That's what the sources suggest. It gives you clarity.
So you're less likely to chase after stuff just because someone else thinks you should.
Precisely. You avoid spending on things that don't bring real happiness,
Yeah.
and it makes it easier to say no, which,
Yeah.
connects to some of her other tips. It's like the foundation.
That's a pretty powerful foundation. Okay, let's switch gears to something much more concrete and maybe a bit notorious.
Ah, yes. Credit cards. Tip number 2 is cut up your credit cards.
Whoa. Okay, that sounds pretty extreme for a lot of folks. What's the actual deal there based on the material?
It is extreme, and yeah, she's famous for it.
Right.
She's really, really anti-credit card unless, and this is the key part you see in the sources, unless you're someone who always pays the balance, like completely, every single month, no exceptions.
And if you don't, what's the big red flag she's waving?
This is where she gets, really direct. The sources have quotes like, if you carry debt, you don't own your future, your creditors do. The big trap is just making those minimum payments.
Yeah.
The interest piles up like crazy, you're in debt for years, and that thing you bought ends up costing you way, way more.
So it's less about the card itself being evil and more about how easily it becomes a trap, like a wealth destroyer if you're not super disciplined.
Exactly. For a lot of people, it's just easier to remove that temptation altogether.
Don't finance your lifestyle with borrowed money.
That's the core message.
Yeah. Okay, that leads pretty smoothly into the next one, which is all about building a safety net against those kinds of traps and just life hitting you unexpectedly.
Right. Tip number 3, emergency fund first. This is like absolute bedrock security in all the material you shared.
Yeah.
Before you start investing seriously, before you tackle big debts like your mortgage, though, high interest debt like credit cards is different. You build this fund.
And the amount she talks about is, well, it's pretty big, right? Often more than what others advise.
Yeah, that's a key point. While you often hear 3 to 6 months of expenses, these sources consistently show Sue's pushing for 8 to 12 months, 12 months of living expenses.
Wow. Why so much?
Well, the logic presented is pretty straightforward, if a bit stark. Job losses can drag on longer than you think. Serious illness, family crises, these things can mess with your finances for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Her focus is deep security. She wants you to have a cushion that's big enough to handle a really bad patch without, forcing you into debt or totally wrecking your financial plans.
Okay, so it's not just a little padding. It's like building a financial fortress wall. A different level of resilience she's aiming for.
It really is.
Oh.
Be ready for the worst so you can keep building towards the best, even when things go sideways.
Right. Speaking of building, the next few tips get more into the day-to-day management, starting with how you think about spending money.
Exactly. Tip number 4, Know the true cost of a purchase. And this isn't just about the price tag.
Ah, this is where she talks about the time cost, isn't it? That's interesting.
Yes, exactly. The sources really emphasize her pushing this shift. Don't just ask, can I afford it? Ask, is it worth it?
And how do you figure out if it's worth it?
She suggests asking yourself, how many hours of my life will this cost me? Meaning, how many hours did you actually have to work to earn the money for that specific purchase?
Whoa. Okay, hold on. Thinking about buying like a new phone or something in terms of days or weeks of my life working. Yeah, that completely changes how you see it.
Right.
You start thinking, am I trading my actual life energy, my time for this thing? Is the trade fair?
That's the goal. It forces you to think deeper than just the dollars and cents. It helps stop that impulse buying, the stuff you buy based on emotion or trying to keep up. Connects spending right back to the effort it took.
That feels very tied into that first people first idea, living intentionally.
It totally is. It's putting that philosophy into practical action.
Okay, let's take that idea of mindful spending and apply it to a really big purchase, buying a home. Tip number 5, don't rush to buy a home. This one pushes back hard against that idea that owning a home is always the first best goal.
Oh, absolutely. The sources make it super clear. Owning a home can be great, but timing and your financial readiness, that's everything. She actually lists conditions where you absolutely should wait.
Okay, like what? What are those conditions?
Well, if your job isn't stable, that's a big one. If you don't have a solid 20% down payment, to avoid PMI, private mortgage insurance.
Right.
And crucially, if that big emergency fund we just talked about isn't fully funded, because buying a home brings a ton of other potential costs, repairs, taxes, insurance.
Right. The hidden costs.
Exactly. And without that safety net, you can get into trouble fast.
So that old line about renting being throwing money away,
Yeah.
she basically calls that out as a myth.
Pretty much. Renting is paying for shelter. It serves a purpose. Buying a home before you're truly ready, without the down payment, without the emergency fund, that's a much bigger risk. That can set you back financially way more than renting ever could.
Okay. It's about being ready, not just the act of buying itself.
That's the key distinction.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Okay, building on readiness and big financial steps, let's talk about your financial reputation.
Right. Tip number 6, FICO score matters. The sources call it your financial GPA or, yeah, your reputation with money.
And why is that score so important? I mean, beyond just getting approved for a loan.
Because it directly affects how much things cost you. A higher score gets you lower interest rates on mortgages, car loans, stuff like that. And that translates into saving thousands, maybe even tens of thousands, over the life of those loans. It can even affect your car insurance premiums. It's real money back in your pocket.
So keeping that score healthy is like giving yourself a permanent discount on life's big expenses. What does she say are the main ways to do that based on the sources? Pay everything on time. Every single bill.
Yeah.
Keep your credit utilization low. That means don't max out your cards. Try to use only a small percentage of your available credit. And don't just close old credit card accounts if they're in good standing. The length of your credit history actually helps your score.
Got it. Solid practical advice there.
Yeah.
Now, still on the topic of credit, but a specific situation where she has maybe her most absolute, like zero wiggle room rule.
The co-signing one. Tip number 7. Say no to co-signing loans.
And the sources really hammer this home like never. No exceptions at all.
Absolutely zero exceptions. The material is crystal clear on this. Never co-sign. Not for your kids, not for your parents, not for your best friend, nobody.
Wow, that's harsh. Tough love, I guess. Why is the risk so incredibly high?
Because when you co-sign, you become legally 100% responsible for that entire debt if the main borrower can't pay.
Right.
And as the sources point out, why do people usually need a co-signer? Because the bank doesn't trust to pay it back.
Good point.
So if they default, your credit score gets hammered, you owe the money, and almost always. It destroys the relationship too.
So you think you're helping, but you're actually putting your own financial future and the relationship at massive risk. You're basically betting your stability.
Exactly. She frames it as, look, this isn't about not loving someone. It's about protecting your own financial foundation so you can actually be secure and maybe help in other sustainable ways down the line.
Okay, that makes sense.
Oh.
And that need to protect your own foundation ties right into the next tip, which is all about building that secure future for yourself.
Right. Tip number 8, start retirement savings now, like right now. According to the sources, her favorite line here is something like, the best time to start saving was yesterday.
Ah.
The second best time is today.
So urgency is key. What kind of accounts does she recommend using?
The materials definitely point to tax-advantaged accounts. So 401k, especially if your job offers a match, you have to get the match. That's free money. Roth IRAs, traditional IRAs. And a really important point she makes is don't wait until you think you have enough to save. Start small. Even if it's just like 25 or 50 bucks a month, just start.
Why is starting small now so much better than waiting until you can save, say, a few hundred a month later?
Few words. Compound interest. And time.
The magic combo.
Exactly. The longer your money is invested, even tiny amounts, the more time it has to grow. It earns returns, and then those returns earn returns. Over decades, it's incredibly powerful. Starting early just gives it more time to work that magic.
Okay, and this is where she drops that advice that probably makes some parents feel a bit uneasy at first, right? But the logic is there.
Oh yeah, the one that can ruffle feathers. The controversial but smart advice, as some sources put it. Fund your own retirement before you pay for your kids' college.
Yeah, that feels like it goes against every parental instinct. What's the reasoning there in the sources?
It's purely practical, based on how funding works. As she points out, there are lots of ways to fund college scholarships, grants, student loans, hopefully handled carefully, of course.
Right.
But there are zero ways to get a loan for your retirement. If you drain your savings, or just don't save enough for yourself because you paid for college, you risk becoming a financial burden on your kids later.
Ah, okay. So securing your own future is actually the better long-term gift to them.
That's the argument.
Hmm.
It avoids that potential role reversal down the road. It's tough, but the sources present it as a necessary financial truth.
Makes sense when you frame it that way. Okay, we're nearing the end here. Tip number 9 is about a fundamental way of living.
Live below your means. And this is more than just, making a budget. It's a whole philosophy the materials show her championing. Her specific phrase is often quoted as, live below your means, but within your needs.
Okay, below your means, but within your needs. What's the difference there?
Well, living below your means is simple. Spend less than you earn. Create a gap. Living within your needs is about figuring out what you genuinely need for a secure, decent life versus all the stuff you just want.
Ah, the wants versus needs distinction.
Yeah, often those wants are driven by, what other people have, what society tells you to buy. She's pushing back against that pressure to spend just to impress.
So it's not just about being frugal for its own sake, but about making conscious choices, focusing on saving and building wealth instead of just looking wealthy.
Exactly. The real goal is that financial security and freedom we've been talking about, not keeping up appearances.
Okay, which brings us perfectly to the 10th and final principle we pulled from your sources. And this one, well, it feels like the essential first step before anything else can really work.
Yeah, tip number 10, face your financial truth and invest wisely. And the sources really highlight what she sees as the biggest single mistake people make with money.
Which is?
Lying to yourself about it.
Lying to yourself. How does that work financially? What does that look like?
Oh, it's, avoiding looking at your bank balance, ignoring the credit card statements piling up, pretending that spending habit isn't really a problem, not tracking where the money actually goes.
Or just avoiding those tough money conversations, even just with yourself.
Exactly. The material really emphasizes
Mm.
you cannot fix a problem you won't even admit exists. Real change, lasting change, she argues, has to start with honestly facing where you are right now, no matter how uncomfortable that might feel.
So step 1 is just radical honesty.
Okay.
And once you've done that, you've faced the truth, you've built that foundation, you're living within your needs. Where does she point people for actually building long-term wealth?
Right, the investing piece. So once the emergency fund is solid, high interest debt is gone, the sources consistently show her strongly recommending low-cost index funds.
Index funds.
Yes, specifically things like S&P 500 ETFs come up a lot.
And why those? What's the logic behind recommending index funds over, say, picking stocks or actively managed funds?
The rationale laid out in the sources is pretty solid. First, diversification. An S&P 500 fund instantly spreads your money across 500 of the biggest U.S. companies, so you're not betting heavily on just one or two. That lowers risk.
Okay.
Second, low costs. Index funds have super low fees compared to funds where a manager is actively trying to pick winners. And third, performance. Historically, over the long run, these simple, broad market index funds actually tend to beat most of those active managers, especially after you factor in their higher fees.
So it's simple, it's cheap, and it generally works better long-term for most people.
That's the gist. Face reality, build the foundation, live intentionally, and then invest simply and broadly for the long haul.
Wow. That really covers a lot. We've gone through these 10 pretty powerful principles from Suze Orman, all drawn straight from the source materials you shared.
Yeah, it's quite a framework.
And they're not just ideas, right? They're actionable rules. Some are definitely tough, some maybe go against the grain, but they're all designed to build real financial security, maybe even a path to wealth.
It's a system that really emphasizes, self-awareness, discipline, knowing your needs versus wants, and then letting time and smart, simple investing do the heavy lifting.
And thinking about that very last point about the biggest mistake, being lying to yourself, makes me think, given all these principles, especially that call for radical honesty, here's something for you, the listener, to maybe mull over.
Hmm.
What is one single financial truth, maybe something you've been kind of avoiding looking at, that if you faced it today, can be the key to unlocking your ability to really start using these principles and building the future you actually want?